okay, there's still lots of mega churches and there's lots of organized stupidity in the religion in America.
Yeah,
but,
do mega churches exist in Europe? I don't imagine they do, right?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. You don't hear
we
them.
have lots of old churches, and
Right.
they are infrequently populated. The joke is that someone comes to the door with a survey and says, "Yeah, are you religious?" And he says, "I think so, Mom. What religion are we?" And it's like, "Well, we're Church of England." No, we're Catholics. That's right. Put down Catholics. It's one of those things that it is a completely superfluous detail.
100% of the proceeds gained from this monetized episode will be donated to sciencesaves.org. Thanks for listening.
Well, Phil Thunderfoot, thank you so much for joining me today on this podcast. I have watched your content for years and years and years. I think I was first introduced to you in either 2013 or 2014. And one of the things I really liked about your channel was you cover a little bit of everything. You cover science. I remember at the time you would cover like theories, and then you would also cover things that had to do with atheism, agnosticism, God. For example, your series that you had where you were reading the Bible to people. I revisited that yesterday and I was just laughing my butt off. Exactly. Just so funny, just so funny. But one thing I wanted to learn a little bit more about was your personal relationship with the church and Christianity, because I couldn't remember ever hearing you talk much about, were you raised religious? Is that why the atheist message is important to you? I feel like most people who are well known for talking about that subject have had an experience with the church, and usually a negative one. And so I just kind of wanted to find out a little bit more about your personal story in terms of how you ended up where you are with your content.
So my background, growing up in the UK, this just isn't even slightly remotely controversial.
Right.
In fact, I think there are now, Christianity is now less than 50% in the UK. And of those 50% who are Christian, it's like 10% go to church regularly. It's just saying I'm an atheist in England is nothing, and it's moving that way in America as well. I mean, it's fastest growing demographic is not religious,
right?
People tend to find other surrogates for it, but so as growing up as a kid, there's Christianity is the wallpaper. It's just a background color overlooked by most people. No one takes it too seriously. And there was never any fundamentalism. And there were little bits where, as a kid, we would have to go and sing songs every morning and say prayers, and it was bloody stupid. Even as a kid, it was bloody stupid. And then I spent about a year in America, and that was when I was 10. And then, I've been back and lived in America, and it was when I was 2010, that sort of area. I was living New York, upstate New York, at a sort of college town, which wasn't representative of upstate New York. So very, very liberal by comparison, and also massive. Right, so it's Cornell, right? And when you get onto campus, one of the first things that you notice is 30% of the people are Asian, and it's like completely alien demographic to the entire rest of upstate New York.
Right.
But it was an outlier there. It was also an outlier with the religious stuff that no one really gave a shit there. And that's while I was there, I had some spare time. That's when I started making the Why Do People Laugh at Creationist videos, because those were in the really early days of YouTube. And in the early days of YouTube, creationists were everywhere
All over the place. Yeah.
and saying some of the dumbest stuff. And the idea at the time was, I didn't know anything about this newfangled video site, but I can just idle through this stuff, and it's like wrong, wrong.
Right.
And these were the early videos with Venom Fang X, and I knew nothing about. The idea was, I make some decent quality stuff, well researched, and people will find it. And in the end, they kind of did. I mean, YouTube's transformed almost beyond all recognition since then.
Right.
It's now a massively sort of commercial site that, when I started, actually, I was just watching your interview with Aaron, or when me and him started, it was amateur hour. It really was just guys with video, with webcams and that sort of thing. Nowadays, you get people spending real money on this shit.
Real money.
I mean, so part of me misses the early days of YouTube when it was a lot more organic, and less polished and commercial. But people like making money. So
right. I do miss the days where the algorithm, like it was the early days, and the algorithm was really smooth. It didn't have any ads, and so like you would post something and somebody would respond to it and it would show up on my feed, and then you would respond to that and it would show up on my feed, and then they would respond, and it was just like, this blissful, I can catch up with all the tea right now. I don't have to worry about ads. I don't have to worry about subscribing, hitting the little bell, doing any of that. It was beautiful.
Now it's I think 90% of the views come through non-subscription stuff. So I mean, how many subscribers you have is almost, it's a historic number. It sort of means something, but almost nothing.
Right.
Things have changed a lot, and so and also, I mean, it sort of throws you at the complete mercy of the algorithm. And,
it does. Absolutely.
And during the pandemic, I got on the rough end of that, which was like, they started banning my videos as disinformation and all sorts.
I saw that. I was
going around debunking all this sort of disinformation, and it's like, nope. The mere fact that you've got the clips of their video in there,
right?
The algorithm couldn't distinguish that from the original.
Right.
So
right. I mean, to be fair though, I also got some content banned, and I was flagged as a COVID misinformer because I shared like memes about COVID. It was literally just jokes about COVID. Or I also shared a meme that said Lady Gaga looked like Jesus's mother Mary, and I got like flagged for that because that was considered like bullying and misinformation. What was it? You mentioned that you were in that area that was so much different than New York. It was a different type of people. It was a different belief system than the rest of the state. So what was it about that experience that made you be like, I want to take this onto YouTube. I want to start making videos about this. I need to get my thoughts out there.
Right. So, I mean, it's all just a list of coincidences. Right? I was actually there doing research. And I was actually doing fairly well at the research thing. So my supervisor had a big pile of papers on his desk. So I had like loads of free time and nothing to do with it. So I could either add more to the pile, which is never a terribly fulfilling job, or, I could start debunking these guys on YouTube. And it's like, why not? So, I mean, it was completely unplanned. But I mean, it's actually since turned out to be a very the ability to make videos and sort of solely to tell stories has become a very useful, very transferable skill, especially in the world of academics, where they're all basically cripples when it comes to this.
Right.
So it started off just debunking the creationists, but you also develop some of the useful skills along the way, which is quite useful.
And do you remember like the moment where you realized you had an audience and you had something there that was going to become bigger than what you'd originally intended?
Yes, I do remember it. It was one of those times when I looked at the subscriber count, and all of a sudden it dawned on me. It was in the thousands of people. And yeah, and there comes a point when you start just making an effort because lots of people are going to watch it. I mean,
Right.
in the beginning, it's sort of fairly kitschy stuff, but
Right.
once you get into that, I remember sort of doing the calculations for how much time would be wasted if I put extra bits in there, and nowadays, people they don't care so much about that sort of thing anymore.
Right.
It used to be 10 minutes was the limit, so yeah, and you couldn't choose the thumbnail. I've got mixed feelings about a lot of this stuff.
I can't imagine not being able to choose the thumbnail, because when YouTube chooses my thumbnail, it's always the worst shot in the whole video. So I'm so glad they at least added that feature. What's the harshest reaction you've ever gotten to your material? Or was there ever a time where one of your videos got such a harsh reaction that it actually made you look back on it and think, was this wrong? Like, am I gaslighting myself?
So the nearest I ever got to that was, do you ever remember, did you ever see any of my videos on feminism?
I was just about to ask if it was the Anita Sarkeesian era, if that was
so yeah, it was the Anita Sarkeesian era, but more specifically, it was the end of the Anita Sarkeesian era. So, at the beginning, when she was putting out videos that were getting hundreds of thousands of hits and all this sort of thing and making a big splash, and it was headlines everywhere, then you would justify sort of paying this attention. Later on, she essentially did become a lol cow, as it were. And if you take a look at her videos now, in fact, hang on, allow me just 1 second. How many hits do you think her latest video has?
I'm gonna guess maybe low thousands, maybe like 1,000 or 2,000.
You might even be highballing at that. I think they now struggle to get 1,000 hits.
Because I feel like that was an era that has bygone.
So 3 weeks ago, 1.3 thousand.
Yeah.
1 month ago, 1,000. 1 month ago, 567 hits. And at this point, it's like, yeah, when you're focusing on things like that, you're basically milking it. And
Right.
there was a whole cottage industry. In this sense, she was actually right. There was a cottage industry that basically built up around telling you she was full of crap, which largely she was. Interesting. Do you have any idea what this is?
I don't know.
Right. So when I was a kid in America, there was this game called Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh yeah.
And is there a Dungeons and Dragons thing on there? There is somewhere anyway. So there was also one of the first satanic panic things.
Right.
And it was around Dungeons and Dragons. And if you ever want a complete laugh, look for very young Tom Hanks in a movie called Mazes and Monsters.
Mazes and Monsters. I've never even heard of that.
No, it's hilarious. Mazes and Monsters. And it's Tom Hanks when he's very young, before he's broken out, before he's become famous. And he starts doing a little bit of Mazes and Monsters, which obviously Dungeons and Dragons. And of course, he gets addicted to it, and he can't tell the difference between reality and fantasy anymore. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I mean, it's anyway. And this was, at the time when all the Christian folks were saying this was seducing people into the occult, into magic, into Satanism.
Right.
So initially, it was Dungeons and Dragons. Then it later became Harry Potter.
Yeah, I was about to say Harry Potter was like the witch hunt of my generation, I feel like.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, it just how can you communicate with people who think that Harry Potter is a big sort of social influence. Anyway, so Anita Sarkeesian was this to an element in the,
Right.
you know, one of her big pitches was that the video games were going to turn people sexist. And it's like, this is a bit of a stretch, you know. Dungeons and Dragons doesn't turn people into magic users. Playing games where you shoot monsters doesn't turn you into a gun nut.
Right.
Or, you know, given the sheer hours played, you know that if there is any effect there, it is tiny. So yeah, I mean, so she was the sort of latest iteration for me, just this sort of satanic panic type thing.
Right.
But by the time it was at the end and this huge cottage industry had built up around her, it really didn't matter anymore, and it became, you know, that bubble shifted way off to the right,
Right.
and started supporting people like Trump. And yeah, so it was me and a guy called Sargon of Akkad who we had a fairly decent falling out over this. And
Did he think you
yeah,
were being like too hard on her, or what were his thoughts?
no, it was the other way around.
Got it.
As far as I was concerned, they were just completely jumping the shark, you know. And for me, the tipping point was, I can't remember the details, so this is a little fuzzy. The
Because
details
it's been a
might
minute. It's been like at least 10 years, right? Probably, or maybe a little less.
It's been a few years, and
Yeah.
a lot's happened since then.
Yeah.
But it was something like one of these guys who was a feminist on YouTube had sort of shot his girlfriend or something.
Wow.
And literally, they were going on and just sort of talking shit about it in a way that I want nothing to do with this. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like I don't think that the reason he shot his girlfriend had anything to do with feminism.
No.
And
Yeah.
it was just, yeah, kind of heartlessly capitalizing on it. And not only that, I mean, all the time you're addressing this as the sort of satanic panic, mazes and monsters, you know, feminism version.
Right.
You maybe got a point. By the time you're on to sort of rejoicing whenever a feminist shoots his girlfriend or some shit like that, and
Right.
I'm sorry, I want nothing to do with any of you.
Right.
And
That's
I got a
just,
huge, I got a big backlash over that. In
you
fact,
got backlash over that?
oh yeah, I'm big time. And a lot of it is because people do sort of align into sort of bubbles of one sort or another, or lines of thought.
Yeah.
And it's like when you sort of say, "Nah, fuck you guys, I'm out of here."
Yeah. Yeah. Was the
and-
backlash from what we would now call incels, or was it from like actual feminists?
These were these were more the anti-social justice warrior people who,
Got it.
as far as I was concerned, where they were going, I wanted nothing. Yeah, there is no way you're going to convince people that you are the good guys if this is how you behave. And
Right.
it wasn't just that. There was another girl called Lauren Southern.
That name sounds vaguely familiar.
Pretty girl, long blonde hair, maybe, I don't know. And she also went sort of, how about Milo Yiannopoulos?
There it is. That's the name I know. Yeah.
So him and her went to some of these like feminist rallies and were basically just trying to piss people off. And there comes a point when you're not reporting on this. You're not trying to actually sort of show why this is bullshit. You're just going there to sort of stir up drama,
right,
and make your bread crushed that way.
Yeah, man, that's a name we don't hear anymore. I feel like, wow, you like sent me back.
Milo, he's back again. He's with Marjorie Taylor Greene now?
Really?
I think so.
Oh no, gosh.
Milo.
I feel like, did you ever watch Pokemon?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, there's these characters, these bad guys. It's a guy and a girl that show up and ruin everything all the time. And I feel like those two are like the real life version of them, who just pop up out of nowhere and just ruin everything. But they do like a terrible job of it.
He's an intern with Marjorie Taylor Greene. As of this summer.
He's an intern with her?
Apparently so.
How the mighty have fallen.
Well, there is that as well. This is where it's refreshing that people are becoming less crazy when it comes to religion in America.
Right.
But they are adopting other, if you like, cultish beliefs.
Right. Right. And I feel like the ones that are acting crazy are acting very crazy. So even though it's fewer people, they recognize that they're losing that hold on our society, and they're like making huge scenes trying to get people to come back to their side. And it's very uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah. So Trump is the interesting one at the moment, because he's exactly the sort of guy I said, I'm going nowhere near any of this. I mean, you take a look at what Trump was. He was the vaccine denying, global warming denying, all style, no substance.
Right.
He was an idiot. Right. And for me, I want nothing to do with that. A load of these people, well, he pisses off the feminists, the social justice warriors. So he's our man. And it's like, you can do better than that, guys. It's like, if that's your criterion,
right?
And the irony of so before the election, he was into sort of vaccine denial on the measles, mumps, rubella stuff, the MMR, and early on, he's flipped up and down on the vaccine issue, as has loads on the Republican side. But anyway, now the interesting thing is that no one can actually win an election without Trump's base.
Right.
And the thing is that it's doubtful, even if he gets the election, whether he can win, if he gets the nomination, right? So other people would have a better chance, but they would need Trump's blessing to do it, and he's never going to give it. So
right. And I feel like his followers and his devotees have a certain standard, which I use the term standard very loosely, that they expect. And it's almost like watching people have to downplay their behaviors to meet this like low level in order to get those votes. Like they have to, people who would normally probably not say something or not do something are deciding, I want those votes, so I'm willing to represent something I normally wouldn't for the sake of those votes. Yeah. I'm willing to become this person. And it's before 2015, I feel like we really didn't see that. We usually saw people faking to be better than they were and then coming back and lying about it, then groveling to the lowest common denominator in order to get that vote and like trying to decide if they're actually going to do those things.
So who was the Herschel Walker?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
I mean, I just sat there and this is really the guy you want to send to try and represent your state on a country level.
Right.
Like, the vampires and werewolves guy.
This is the guy. This one. You sure about that?
Like you were saying about the this sort of compromise of willing to toe the line on certain things. And for him, it's utterly ludicrous that he has all these sort of illegitimate children and abortions for all these women, and he still sits up there and says, "No, abortion is wrong."
Right.
You have an army of illegitimate children and have paid for abortions for other women.
You would have a bigger army of illegitimate children if you had not paid for abortions yourself. But that's exactly what I'm talking about, where people are literally willing to be like, yes, that makes sense to me, just to oppose left views they don't agree with. No. They're literally willing to sit there and you're like, this makes sense to you. And they're like, yeah. And you're like, no, it doesn't. No, I don't care. It's not leftist.
I think it's the single issue voters, the biggest idiots on the planet, As long as you tell them you sleep with a gun under your pillow, they'll vote for you. You
Right.
tell them you're pro-life, they'll vote for you.
Right.
And so it becomes this sort of logic puzzle, which absolutely isn't figured out by people like Herschel Walker. In fact,
No.
this is the one where Trump is a mystery to me, because he starts off as a genuinely failed businessman.
Right.
And it's only when he gets on the Celebrity Apprentice where
God,
it's
I
not
forgot
so much,
about that. Oh,
I've never actually seen it, but I've seen some of the history of this, and he was good at LARPing. You know what live action role playing is?
yes. Yes.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. Dungeons and Dragons hardcore version.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. In real life.
So he was very good at LARPing at being a successful businessman. But you take a look at his actual businesses, and there's nothing. And you look at him now; he's hucking. What are they? Badly photoshopped, non-fungible tokens.
Yes.
Just as
yes.
Months after it's all gone as a fad.
And he's sold so many of them. I was reading about that yesterday. I honestly, though, sometimes I wonder how many people buy those things as like the joke for the bit, but still, it doesn't help any. It doesn't help.
The disclaimers on it were hilarious. You didn't know which one you were going to get.
No.
And not only that, there was all sorts of things saying, has no intrinsic value, may not increase in price.
May not. May not. And so for you personally, at any point did your YouTube channel become, back in the day, it was like, oh, I want to make these videos because I have these ideas. At any point, did it become almost like a crusade for you to be like, I have to put this out there because so many people are going off the deep end? Like, did it ever become a mission, or has it always just been kind of for fun or for your own entertainment?
So in the early days, to me, it does seem like there's still lots of mega churches, and there's lots of organized stupidity in the religion in America.
Yeah, do mega churches exist in Europe? I don't imagine they do, right?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. You don't hear them.
We have lots of old churches, and they are infrequently populated. The joke is that someone comes to the door with a survey and says, are you religious? And he says, I think so. Mom, what religion are we? And it's like, well, we're Church of England. No, we're Catholics. That's right. Put down Catholics. It's one of those things that it is a completely superfluous detail.
Right.
And I'm pretty certain it's a pretty superfluous detail to most Christians as well, in that I had randomly... Oh, we've frozen again.
Oh, no, I can hear
frozen. You can hear me?
I can hear you, but you're frozen. But I can hear you.
Okay. In which case, I've just reached for my Bible. And this was just randomly the first thing that I opened up on Exodus. And he who strikes his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. That's Exodus 21:15. 16. He who kidnaps a man and sells him, or if he is found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. I think that's about slavery. And he who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death.
Wow.
And it's like, it just goes on and on like this. And if a man beats his male or female servant with a rod, so that he dies under his hands, he shall be punished. Well, there you go. Let no one say that.
It's like, cuss your mom, we'll kill you. Kill a person, we're just really gonna make it hard for you to have a good day. And
the very next line, notwithstanding, if he remains alive a day or two, he shall not be punished, for he is his property.
So if you beat someone within an inch of death, you're good. But if you beat someone to death who works for you, who is your slave, then we're gonna turn off your Wi-Fi. We're just gonna
pretty much. And this was just a sort of random sort of opening of the Bible, and it's like, no one, and this is right at the beginning as well. This is page 100 of the Bible or something. So you'd have expected that if people are starting reading it from the beginning, and there's like pages and pages of this about sort of blood sacrifices and the and the right way to burn the fat of the ox, and such that it smells good to God. And yeah, I don't see how anyone can possibly read this and still take it seriously, but I know that people do.
Well, I think to a point, I read a quote of, it was either a quote of yours or it was a description on one of your videos where you were talking about how you had read, I actually wrote it down, 1 in 3 people as of 2010, or sorry, 1 in 10 have ever read the Bible. And that you predicted it was actually half of that in reality, like if they were being honest, and that you called it the best-selling, least read book of all time. And so I think what, to your point, anyone who's ever read that can't take it seriously. The problem is the only people I know who have read the entire thing don't believe it. They're not religious.
Yeah. And it's actually quite entertaining to read a lot of this stuff. In the all of a sudden, Harry Potter seems like a much better put together book, or Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. They've got much more coherent plots. They've got much better morals to the story, and
they've both been read more than the Bible.
And people actually genuinely have read them and can tell you about the plot. You randomly open the Bible and ask people, what happens in Corinthians. Apparently it's about Solomon, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you that. Or Ezekiel.
So I've heard.
Oh, Ezekiel 25:17. The path of the righteous man is beset. Oh, hang on, that's not in there. But it's still good. It's still about one of the most quoted Bible verses, I will bet.
And the wildest part is, again, to your point, if I walked up to somebody and I said, chapter 3 in the first Harry Potter book says this, and it's something wrong, somebody would backhand me, quote the book word for word, and spit in my face and be like, don't ever disrespect Harry Potter like that again. If I were to walk up and be like, hey, Deuteronomy 1:5 says this, they'd be like, actually, it's really metaphorical, what it actually means, if they even know what I'm talking about,
The Bible is one of the biggest collective acts of cognitive dissonance ever.
Right. And if you were to take it to a modern day editor, if you were to take the Bible to Random House and be like, I want to publish this, they'd be like, the number of loopholes in this story that don't make sense.
I mean, the thing is, the plot holes I can forgive if it was a good story. I mean, you can do all this sort of things with like, Avengers or any of these other sort of sci-fi films. They've all got plot holes in them, but it's a good story. And if the story is good, you can forgive some of the plot holes. The thing is, it's a shite story with lots of plot holes. So.
Yeah, and not only that, but like, I could also forgive plot holes if millions of people on the planet didn't think they were going to burn for eternity if they didn't follow exactly the rules, even though the rules don't make any sense. Right? That also makes it a thing. Something else I think is interesting is, how mad do you think the people would be in the history of Europe, right, who died in the wars between the Catholics and the Protestants, if they were to find out that nowadays it literally doesn't matter and nobody cares? Like, how upset do you think those people would be? I don't know. So many people died. So many people died over the Church of England.
Oh, hang on.
Oh, let's see. I can hear you.
No. I'm just, I'm almost there. It's my OBS has crashed. That's the problem.
Oh, well, it's a very beautiful background of planet Earth.
It comes up with the rations with Zoom, that one, apparently. That was just out of the box. It's kind of nice.
It is nice, yeah. And also, this kind of takes me back to the times when I would watch your videos and it would only be the voiceovers, just over the videos.
So I always liked that but back in the day, anonymity was kind of nice. That's the other thing I really liked about the early YouTube as well, was it was basically completely faceless. Arguments stood on their merits.
Right.
And eventually you're going to get doxxed. I mean, it's inevitable.
Well, and yeah, and I remember when I was first introduced to like the YouTube atheist realm, almost everyone, with the exception of Aaron and maybe Amazing Atheist, everybody was anonymous. Oh, there you are. Yay. Yeah, they were all a character or a logo or an animated thing, or like Armored Skeptic, how he had the helmet on. That was huge, I feel like.
The Armored Skeptic generation, when they went over to poorly animated whatever, which is fine. I mean, there's no problem with that. But that was a sort of generation afterwards. The really early ones, there was about 4 or 5 of us, and eventually we sort of got talking to each other. And it turns out that about half of them were lecturers at universities who just got pissed off with this sort of stuff and were, it's like, fine, I can snipe this one from, and I can do it anonymously, and it's no real problem. Although there was blowback when I eventually did get doxxed that Muslims tried to get me fired and feminists tried to get me fired.
I knew about the feminists. I didn't know about the Muslims.
Oh,
what happened there?
So I've burned more Qurans than probably everyone else on YouTube combined.
Wait, like literally burn them?
Yes.
Why? Like on camera?
Yes. Yeah. So what you do is you get a hard drive that you don't want anymore, like this, and you copy like 200,000 copies of the Quran onto it, and then you burn the hard drive.
That's like a futuristic book burning.
It turns out that if you're counting deletion of digital media, then your browser automatically caches these things and deletes them. So technically, anyone who reads the Quran online is guilty of destroying the Quran.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't even think that.
Going back to the Nazis and the book burning, the whole idea was to destroy the ideas, to get rid of the ideas. If you're just creating a copy of it and then destroying it, then this is not quite the same thing.
Now, what are your thoughts on, because, ever since I have deconstructed, it has been a lot easier to talk about things like that, like burning the Quran and like burning the Bible and like how that to us like doesn't mean anything. What are your thoughts on the idea that some people, when they see you doing that, in their mind, that is a very real, horrific offense? And like, do you think, in your opinion, that people like that should be exposed more to people doing things like you were doing? Or do you think like, I feel bad for them? Or what are your thoughts when people genuinely, they're not just trying to be a jerk on YouTube, they genuinely are like, oh my gosh, he's creating this horrific offense?
Well, I mean, it's you've got to try and break them out of it at some point. And,
right.
This is one of the, if you like, religion, if you look at it demographically around the world, is online. People always end up in bubbles. The more time they spend online, the more adverts they see. So all the people who run the social media stuff, they want to try and keep you there as long as possible, and they'll do whatever needs to be done to keep you there. And that's usually feed you things that you want to see. So you inevitably end up with a sort of confirmational bias of information around you.
Right.
It's just the way it is. Right. Religion is that, so all the Muslims are in one area of the world, all the Christians in another. There's this macroscopic phase separation. Religion on its own doesn't survive. You can't just sort of, and this is one of the things that was, obviously so stupid about Christianity, is this idea that God speaks to people's hearts. And it's like, yeah, but he only does, he doesn't do that in the middle of the Congo or something.
Right.
It's only where there are other people there to tell you that this is something you should think about. There was one of the early YouTube channels, why doesn't God heal amputees? Brings people back from the dead, but can't reattach a limb.
Well, and it's interesting that God can create creatures that can regenerate their own limbs, and he chose not to do that for human beings, which are supposed to be the vessel of his word and the image of him. So it's like a jellyfish can do it and a lizard can do it, but you're telling me you couldn't show the same grace to a human being?
This is another one which quite often gets Christians in quite a tizzy, this thing about man making God in his own image, usually a guy, and it's like, whoa, hang on. So God needs. Why does God need a mouth and an asshole? let alone reproductive stuff.
Right.
I mean, it's like, did you ever see something by Oates and Garfunkel about the loophole?
No.
Okay, this is something else you've got to take notes on. They do this little song about there's a loophole in the Bible about for people who want premarital sex but can't have sex, and yeah.
Is this the real Oates and Garfunkel, or is this somebody like a parody channel?
So it's not Simon Garfunkel. It's
okay. I was like, did Hall and Oates? Simon and
but if you've got a computer in front of you now, I won't say it out loud because I might get you all demonetized. Which
I only make like 20 cents on every
me
video.
in the A because I love Jesus. And yeah, so it's the loophole that you can't
The loophole
have
by
sex.
Garfunkel and Oates. Oh.
It's very funny. Anyway, so rolling back. So have you actually got that now in the ears? Yeah.
I don't have it in my ears. I'm reading it.
No, okay.
Yeah, I was reading the lyrics, but I will.
The lyrics are amazing. The video is fantastic. But also,
should I link it in the show notes?
Everyone, yeah, just go watch.
To each their own.
The loophole. The loophole. Is it Garfunkel and Oates or Oates and Garfunkel? I forget.
It says on here, Garfunkel and Oates, but again, that's not the Garfunkel and the Oates. They didn't like combine, go rogue.
But it turns out that also this cropped up on. So I quite like some of their songs anyway, but they go back at least 13 years because Garfunkel and Oates 13 years ago, 2.9 million hits. Who said it? Kanye or Hitler? They actually have a video, and I found this the other day, and it's like, my God, this is the mother of all foreshadowing. They got Kanye jumping the shark 13 years early.
So it's like we should have seen it coming, is what you're saying. We shouldn't have been surprised by any of this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's wild. So in your personal life, offline, do religious people and like Christians confront you a lot? Do they talk to you about it? Do they want to know more, or is that pretty separate?
So it's been a while since I did anti-creationist or anti-religious videos of one sort or another, which
is there a reason for that, or it just got old?
No, I mean it's more I drifted off into I like things where you can do a little more science.
COVID misinformation.
Yeah, some of it works out better than others, but I like that sort of thing. But yeah, I would like to go back to some of the creationist stuff. But when I was doing the debunking of the creationist stuff, there was a huge surge in the atheist community at the time. They had the Four Horsemen, which remember Hitchens, Harris, Dawkins, and Dennett.
Yep.
And Hitchens was a rhetorical beast. I mean, he was fantastic. Yeah. And there were atheist conventions at that time, and I went to one or two of those.
Right.
And interesting things at atheist conventions. Have you ever been to one?
No, but I really want to go. I do.
Okay. So I'll tell you what's good, and I'll tell you what's bad.
Yeah, give me a review so I know if I should go or not.
What's good is the nearest analogy I could get is when you're at one of these conventions. It was like being at a pride event when you were. So all the time you're just not allowed to express that you were gay, and they would go to these conventions, and it was such a relief that they didn't have to pretend anymore. These are people who grew up in the South, and it's like you can't say any of this stuff out loud. Right. And all of a sudden they don't have to pretend anymore. And there is such a relief for these people to be at these conventions. Downside is they are 90-something% men, which
Why do you think that is? Because I feel like women should have the most beef with the Bible, honestly.
Yes, and the Quran more so. You know, I forget what it is. A woman's word is worth a quarter of a man in the Quran or something.
Yeah.
You know, on legal matters, and it's like, yeah, this. But yeah, second most popular religion in the world, or is it the most? I forget. Either way, there are a billion people who believe in that.
Yeah.
And so my reckoning or my read on this was always most of the agitation done in the world is done by young, angry men. And you take a look at your revolutionaries or your 9/11 hijackers or whatever, all young, angry men.
Right.
And likewise, most of the preachers and the leaders, they tend not to be so much the younger men at that point, but yeah, so there's a bit of a vibe like that about it, that women don't care so much about it,
like
or they're
almost
not as angry or something. I'm not sure.
Like maybe almost an incel vibe, almost like bordering on.
I wouldn't. Okay, yes and no. So we're talking different aspects of the same phenomena.
Right.
So there's one of these things that goes back forever. Churchill had a variant on it, which is nothing changes in the world until someone's willing to kill someone else over it, which is almost always going to be a young, angry men. So,
right.
Yeah, people who believe in things, people are passionate about them. Bizarrely enough, when it comes to fighting wars, it's usually older men who fight them. Or the generals, the older men, the people who actually do all the running and shooting and dying and all that sort of thing, they tend to be younger. But the generals, they're quite often like 50, 60, that sort of thing. They're not running around in trenches anymore.
Right.
But when you come to the fundamentalists, I mean, I guess a propensity to really believe in stuff to the point where you're willing to do things. And you might even argue that this is the sort of element that got me into this in the first place, that you feel sufficiently motivated to do something.
Right.
And when you put incels in the same category as basically motivated but for different reasons, maybe, I don't know.
That's so interesting. Why do you think it is, just in your opinion, why do you think it is that when men turn their back on a belief, whether it's religion, whether it's anything else, they have that anger and that I'm going to make everybody know how I feel about it. And when women turn their back on that belief, they're mad about it, but they project it in different ways. What do you think?
Okay, so I mean, if I'm predicting what the causes and effects are for the behaviors that you observe in society is notoriously difficult. But if it's me who had to guess,
just your personal guess.
Yeah, it's men are less risk averse, is a general rule.
Right.
And so basically, if there are social prices to pay for putting your head above the parapet, there's, historically, women look for less confrontational ways of solving problems. You get primary effects and secondary effects. So, I mean, it's just on the basis that for the moment that my reckoning is right. That it's basically that, men take risks, women take the safer route.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is that if you then actually get a woman who is actually sort of doing the risky stuff, it's like, what's wrong with her? This is out of the ordinary.
Burn her.